Welcome back to the Shauna Show. Today I am with my friend Dr. Dan, and we're going to be talking about how changing your spine can change your life. I want to give Dan the floor to introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Dan Continenza. I'm a native to Charlotte, Ohio. So I'm a chiropractor, but I'm specifically a nervous system focused pediatric and family chiropractor. I'll tell you the story of how I got to where I am today. I'm sure a lot of you have heard chiropractic for back pain, headaches, and all that kind of stuff, but there's a whole different level that we can address about the body, about the brain when we understand how chiropractic works, and first, how the body works. But how I got to where I am today. Middle school, 14 years old, got a back injury in soccer. I went to see a chiropractor. I was the second one in my family to do so. Chiropractic at that time, I think for a lot of people still was something that not a lot of people were comfortable with. I remember my soccer coach telling me, you're crazy, he's gonna paralyze you, don't you dare get yourself adjusted. Lo and behold, within a week I was back on the field and I was hooked. I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor from that point in time. And if you fast forward a good 9 or 10 years, when I was going to chiropractic school, I had developed a series of chronic illnesses, anxiety, depression, insomnia, gut issues like crazy. I was very sick. And at that time, I had been getting adjusted consistently since I was 14. But from a standpoint of move the bones to free up the joints so that you can move better and feel better, but there was something that was missing. So I found out when I got to chiropractic school that there's an entire philosophy about chiropractic I had not been introduced to, and that is that the body is an intelligent organism that is designed for perfect health. And if perfect health is not expressing itself, then there must be interference in the body somewhere, and that somewhere is the nervous system. So when I began to get steeped in this idea and receive care as a student that was more in line with this philosophy, lo and behold, my chronic issues began to fade away one by one to the point that I'm healthier today than I've ever been in my entire life, and it led me to practice this way. So early in practice, we did a lot with anxiety, PTSD, things that you wouldn't expect a chiropractor to necessarily help somebody with, though we don't treat those conditions. When you care for somebody's nervous system, healing happens spontaneously. That's the natural way, that's the natural state of our lives. Fast forward again to maybe about 5.5 years ago when my first daughter was born.
I'm so glad you're telling this. I was going to ask you to share it.
This is still to this day my favorite story. It's what shaped me where we are today. So my wife and I were very confident in having a home birth, and we thought that everything was going to go exactly the way we wanted it to go. Lo and behold, things didn't go the way we wanted it to go. We ended up at the hospital, ended up with a pretty traumatic birth. So a lot of force was used during intervention to the point where my daughter was born, and they immediately wanted to whisk her away. They said, we got to cut the cord immediately, we got to get her on oxygen, we got to get her on a warmer. And bless my wife, she was more or less demanding that they give her her baby, which bought me a second of time to adjust my child's spine. So I adjusted the top bone of her spine, which we call the atlas. And it's not something I had practiced before. It's not something that I wanted to do, but I did it on the spot. And that child went from being a child that would need to be taken away from mom and dad and put on medical support to fully awake, active, and just in perfect condition. And if you can imagine, we got to keep our baby with us. And that started me off on the journey of being a pediatric chiropractor. So to this day, about 40% of my clients are children. Half of those are babies. And so we see babies as early as 2 days old in our practice on a regular basis.
I love that story so much. Yeah. When I heard you say it originally, you had said maybe this was the whole reason I became a chiropractor in the first place, was to save my child's life. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, and it's even to this day, my skill sets are being driven towards more babies, more adolescent issues. And I still take care of adults, like I said. I mean, still to this day, 60% of our clients are adults. But it's really has become a passion of mine, and is absolutely the purpose that I have on earth here.
Is part of that because you say you deal with the nervous system? Is part of that because the growing nervous system is so important? Like the priority of the adult is their nervous system?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's generally accepted that between the ages of 25 and 30, we've reached full maturity in terms of our skeleton and our brain, which they happen to grow simultaneously. And it certainly is impactful and powerful to adjust an adult and help their nervous system restore itself to more optimal function. But there's something more powerful, for me personally, about caring for a child who they then get to experience life with a different foundation if we're able to help correct neurological interference earlier in life, as early as the day they're born. Absolutely.
I would like to speak about how, because you said it before, normally when people think of chiropractic when they don't know any better, it's just moving bones around.
Sure.
And getting cracks.
Yeah.
And how does that actually correlate with the nervous system specifically? Because, and with the things I'm interested in emotional regulation and habit forming, really creating my life and becoming the person I know, like deep down that I am, that I don't see. It all relates back to the nervous system and learning how to regulate that. And I'm interested to hear how my own self-regulation or the population self-regulation could be limited by something that might be going on, or how to shift that.
Sure. Yeah, well, let's talk about how the spine goes out of alignment to begin with. So yeah, it's true. I mean, if you have a back issue and you get adjusted by a chiropractor, pretty much every chiropractor is going to adjust the spine, at least, if not also the arms, legs, maybe the head, but the spine's included. And so we think chiropractor adjusts the spine, there must be adjusting for back pain. But the thing we don't think about is that the thing contained in your spine is your spinal cord. And the brain relies on a healthy spine to receive stimulation minute by minute in our lives, especially through development.
And spinal cord is part of the nervous system.
The spinal cord is part of the nervous system.
Okay.
It's an easy way to visualize it as the tail of your brain. That's not what we call it, but that's essentially what it is. It is continuous with the brain. So your brain drops the spinal cord right down your spine, and the joints of your spine and the bones and the ligaments and the muscles are all there to protect the spine and allow for movement. We think that over time and with injury and with falls or sports or desk jobs that we start to create some sort of physical restriction in the spine, that where the physical restriction came first. So the chiropractor needs to free up that restriction, and that can work. But the reason it works is because when you move a joint of the spine that is stuck, the brain receives a message. The brain receives healthy stimulation that it's the brain's own stimulation that it needs to thrive on. So yes, taking away that stimulation by restricting a joint is harmful to the brain. So any chiropractor, even if this is not the way they market, if it's not the way they treat their patients, if it's not what they even have on their own minds, every chiropractor who adjusts the spine is also stimulating the brain. But if we take a little bit of a different focus and we understand, well, let's ask the question, how did the spine get stuck to begin with? And I'll use a 2-day-old baby as an example. Or my 0-day-old child. They didn't fall. We weren't in sports. They weren't at a desk job. They haven't even had hard relationships yet. They haven't been exposed to nearly as many toxins as we have. And yet, we can still get restriction in the skeleton, in the spine, and in the bones of the skull, which we can talk about, but it's a little bit different conversation. The way that the brain, let me say this. The way the spine gets stuck is that the brain got stressed first. Where do babies get stressed from? When they're developing in utero, babies are exposed to stress from mom and dad. And unfortunately, primarily moms, so moms have a big role in this, where during, let's say, about 5 weeks of gestation, so 5 weeks after conception, what we call the autonomic nervous system is being formed. Everyone knows the autonomic nervous system because everyone knows what fight or flight is. All right, so fight or flight is one essential survival function of this thing we call the autonomic nervous system, which it sounds like the word automatic, which is what it is. It's a part of your nervous system that's driving automatic behaviors. So when you're talking about habit, emotional regulation, and things like that, there's a heavy correlation to the autonomic system that we can talk about. Identity, right? And so when we start off as babies, we haven't built up habits yet. We haven't built up emotional responses yet. We haven't built up identity yet. But we have built up is a tendency towards fight or flight, or its opposite, rest and recovery, which for babies is also growth and development.
Based on mom's emotional experience?
That's where it begins. Where it begins. Because the umbilical cord is not just for blood and food. The umbilical cord is also a power cord to send signals. So if a mom is stressed, then we know that the baby is already experiencing the world as being potentially stressful and a threatening place to be. If that were true, it would be wise and natural for the baby's nervous system to begin to wire itself for stress, for survival. So fast forward, baby's born, baby's ready for fight or flight. at a time in their lives when they should be in rest and recovery. If birth is stressful, if toxin exposure is involved, there's all sorts of ways after that we begin to lock that nervous system into fight or flight. So this is where the rubber meets the road. If the brain is stressed, how would the brain protect itself? And the answer is simple. The answer is through the body. Through the body. So somebody who's in fight or flight, if you see somebody walking around with their shoulders hunched and their fists clenched and they're looking like they're either ready to protect or fight or run, we know visually we can see that they're in fight or flight. And that process is something that is anchored into the body over time in response to the brain. So to bring this home here, it's not that your spinal joint got stuck first. It's that your brain was driven to protection by consistent and overwhelming stress over time.
That's going to be the majority of the time taking out accidents or anything like that, or is that the blanket statement?
It's a blanket statement. It's a blanket statement.
Okay.
Because let's take an accident or an injury in and of itself. And this is where emotions really get brought into play. We'll use an adult as an example. I'm not saying that if you get in a high-speed motor vehicle accident, that tearing tissue in your spine, doing major damage, fracturing a bone in your spine, of course that will alter the physical potential of how healthy you can be afterwards. I acknowledge that and I agree with that. But let's back up a little bit and say, shy of actually physically tearing spinal cord tissue, we assume under every other circumstance that the body's going to heal an injury. You don't think about the stubbed toe you got 6 months ago. You don't think about the paper cut you got in second grade. With good reason. We expect and we anticipate that they will heal themselves thoroughly and fully, right? Barring scar tissue and whatnot. But generally, the body heals itself.
Yes.
So let's say somebody, I'm using a real life example, I'm not going to name names, but we were whitewater rafting when we were kids, probably teenagers. And somebody fell out of the raft, jammed their thumb on the bottom of the river. It was at a calm part, so no one was in danger. Jammed the thumb hurt, and it was a painful experience. However, like I said, you've jammed your thumb before, and it's healed itself, right? In this circumstance, the rest of the family members were all laughing at the one who fell out of the boat, and there was a lot of embarrassment and frustration and shame involved with that. And that thumb pain persisted for years afterwards. And I'll tell you, if you look into your life and into your friends and family members' lives, you'll see that pattern where if you have an injury, that's just an injury, meaning you're otherwise healthy at the time, life's good, it was a simple accident, generally we're going to recover fully from those kind of things. If there's a lot of emotional content, fear, anger, shame, frustration, lack of support, we're going to see that the way the nervous system responds is different. It responds with a greater amount of kickback or protection. And we actually are starting to log. It holds it. Because now we're logging an emotional memory in the brain, right? Emotions don't just exist in our field. The brain helps to modulate and is responsible for kind of setting the stage for what kinds of emotions we're going to experience through chemical production in our brain, but also through neurological activity, meaning like just the electrical signals themselves are going to be changed based on how the brain perceives the environment. And I just said something there at the end, and I think we can actually take this train. The brain is heavily experiencing the world through perception. And that's what I just mentioned with this injury. Your perception of the accident will dictate your outcome. If the perception of the accident is that it's packaged with emotional baggage, your outcome will be limited by the emotional baggage.
It's the same thought as people, why do some men and women who go to war have PTSD and others don't? It's
You nailed it.
That's so interesting. And then the jam thumb, is that, my brain goes to he jams his thumb, really embarrassed, lots of shame around it, doesn't process that shame. Mm-hmm. Is that thumb being like, hey, you have shame here, like let's process this? Like, is that how you're looking at it?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it from the thumb directly, and when this is not something that I think I'm going to speak thoroughly on. It's not something I'm super schooled on, but you certainly can start to identify how certain types of emotions tend to result in certain issues in certain areas of the body.
Yes.
So I don't know if you've heard of somebody named Louise Hayes.
Yes.
So Louise Hayes wrote a book about this. She wrote many books about this. We can look at her index and you can see certain emotional states that correlate to certain diseases and body parts and illnesses and injuries. And so there's a very tight correlation with certain body parts and the emotion trapped therein, right? But again, it's also happening in central command too, because the brain is the central command center for the entire body. And I mentioned, in the beginning, I said, well, chiropractors believe that the body is this innately intelligent organism that's capable of perfect expression of health and life. And the brain is the control center for making sure that coordination of health is happening. So yes, the thumb, I do believe, can hold the emotional vibration, so to speak, of an injury. But our brain itself is also altered. So we now start to identify with certain emotions at certain times in our lives that keep us anchored to that level of issue or injury. To the point where, well, I'll pause there, but that starts to bring in the fact of how is our brain perceiving not just the event that we encountered, war, right, but even assault as a child, or sexual assault or physical assault or abandonment. Like, these things are perceived differently by different people, and then they go on to live their lives with different levels of trauma, even if the event was the same, because of the perception. But then it also starts to alter our perception of who we are. And who we think we are has a huge amount to do with how we process stress, trauma, and challenge in our lives.
And so then in extreme cases, that leads us to disease.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by that.
Which I know you've had an amazing recovery story.
Mm-hmm. And that was, don't get me wrong, I changed my diet. I started exercising. I touched all areas of my life, but the main thing that I did in order to do all those habits was it was my mind.
Yeah.
It was it was identity work.
Sure.
It's like the crux of everything. So I find that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And I don't want to speak incorrectly here. Absolutely, you got to exercise. You got to eat right. You got to remove the toxins. We need to create an environment that supports health, because if we're constantly consuming garbage and being stagnant and sitting still all day, as I mentioned, each joint of the spine provides essential stimulation to the brain. If you don't use those joints because you don't move, then you're causing other problems as well. But I'm sure you experience this, and you've met people who've experienced this. What do you say about a situation where somebody has changed the diet, they have changed the exercise, they have changed so many things about themselves, and yet they are stuck in a state of chronic illness, right? And I can say from a physical standpoint, you can say, well, perhaps your brain is still anchored physically in the same state that caused the illness, right? In which case let's enter chiropractic. Let's free that up, remove the interference, and give your brain the freedom to express itself differently. But some people will find themselves having dug a hole into a lifestyle. Well, I'll say it straight out. Some people have made an identity out of, I'm somebody who battles chronic illness. I'm somebody who fights against autoimmune illness.
I don't like
right?
it.
I don't like it either.
I never liked it.
But we're all affected by this. Every single one of us, to our own degree, and it's a challenging thing to break out of, and it's challenging to even turn around and face that in the mirror sometimes, because at that state,
face that identity.
Sure, but especially for somebody who is really suffering.
Oh, it's hard to tell them that is that what you mean?
Yes.
Oh, it's such a difficult conversation.
Yeah. And it's not always, well, this is where I think, again, there's something very real and physical about the neurological reality of this. Meaning, again, as a chiropractor, I'm looking at how is your spine, based on the stress you've experienced, how is your spine physically locking itself into a position and a level of tension and a posture that's consistent with what got you into the illness to begin with, what got you into the pain to begin with. And so there's a physical reality to that. And a lot of people, if they're really suffering, you to say, well, it's just your fault. You just got to change your mindset. It's like that. It's not even that it's a rude thing to say. It's that for some people it's an impossibility, because they actually don't have the internal resources to be able to begin taking that, even the first step into, okay, who is it that actually can experience life differently?
So my question becomes, and I think I know the answer as I'm thinking this out loud. People ask me about healing all the time, those who know my story, and even those who know just a piece of it. And one thing I want to say for anybody that might be listening that has a diagnosis of some sort and is chronically ill, or not, maybe it's just something that just happened, is that one thing I say to this day, and I started it pretty quickly after I received my Crohn's disease diagnosis, is I will never say I have Crohn's disease. If I talk about it, I say I have a Crohn's disease diagnosis, and that is just like 1 degree of separation, making it my identity. So I just wanted to share that. My question becomes, if that's an impossibility for somebody to sort of shift their mindset around, then what is the first step? Is it them wanting to heal? Is that what it comes down? Like, nothing's going to happen if they're not like, how can I heal? That's the curiosity that maybe I can heal.
Yeah, I think it's a rare person that doesn't want to heal. I mean, it has to be a very challenging situation where, and then you can imagine a situation where somebody's very sense of safety and survivability in life is anchored to the fact that they have the illness. I'm going to paint a picture of I think, the most extreme situation where somebody's in a financial situation and a relationship, maybe they're married, where they have come to believe, and maybe it is even fact, but again, from the brain standpoint, it doesn't matter if it's fact or fiction, what we believe is a reality, which is why manifestation and affirmations even work. If somebody's support is given to them because of their illness, and the attention they get is based on their illness,
the love that they receive,
the love that they receive,
yes,
or what they perceive as love from their significant other or from their family members, it can be very challenging because there's a very real sense of death that would come along with stepping out of that, and you're risking, and quite literally, some people are risking losing their support network if they were to step out of that illness. So I'm painting a kind of an extreme example, but for the most part, I believe that pretty much everybody wants to heal. They want to get better.
At some level,
yes,
they do.
And maybe we could even say maybe everybody somewhere deep down wants to heal.
It's the same. I've been having this thought recently about, I'm on my own little fitness journey. This is sort of one of my last bricks in like creating habits in all areas of my life. And people tell me a lot of opinions about working out or getting fit or wanting to, feel good in my body in a certain type of way. And what I see is that everybody wants to be fit, have good relationships, and feel abundant. Like, ultimately. Do they admit that? Maybe not. But ultimately, everybody wants those things. And I think, and the thought I had was, if you ask them, if you didn't have to work for it, would you like to be fit? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what I have come down to is because those things are inherent. Those things are available to us. Those things are these divine areas that we can experience life.
Well, right, and that goes in to bring it back around to the chiropractic philosophy that I mentioned. We believe that perfect expression of health is 100% available all the time. It doesn't mean everybody is going to express that perfect potential for health, and we can use a simple, a genetic condition as an example. Like, some people are born with, there's a condition where some of the vertebrae in your spine might not be fully formed. Okay, so that's going to alter the potential of the spine to move in some sort of theoretically perfect way. So there's a limit according to physical matter, but there's a perfect potential for expression. I think where people get hung up is they don't necessarily believe that a more optimal expression of health is available to them.
Correct.
It's theoretically available for the theoretical average person, but I don't believe I'm somebody who can experience that. And again, there is some truth to that, that somebody who's born without use of their legs won't necessarily be a marathon runner. Okay, so I'm not saying that we don't have limitations, we do. But the person who you're mentioning, who you said, oh, if I took away all barriers, would you want the fitness, the prosperity, the perfect health? And then there's definitely a gap in how much consistent effort it would take to achieve that, and the willingness to embark on that journey with a very big unknown gap between where you are now and where you're going to end up. And I think it's fair enough to say people are reasonably content with some improvement, right? Well, all I need to do is get this healthy and I'll be good with that. Fine, that's wonderful. I don't think, I'll use myself an example and say, I'm not a big fan of the idea of fasting. I believe wholeheartedly that fasting is an absolutely incredible health strategy. And it's something that I don't feel willing to do right now in my life, right? So we're not all willing to do all the things to get as healthy as we theoretically could be. However, one thing, bringing it back to what's the first step somebody could take? Is it simply believing that they can get healthy? Is it wanting to be healthy? Is it wanting to overcome the illness that has become the crux of their identity? And something that I experienced back in chiropractic school when I went from horribly, I would say I was miserable. I was horribly ill. As I think, in a way that
I forgot.
You also experienced in your life. It's like, this is not where I want to be. I feel miserable, and I feel like I'm fighting against it tooth and nail, but I'm not making any progress. But the advantage I had was that for me, grad school, I spent 4 years at chiropractic school, becoming a doctor of chiropractic. It wasn't just education for me. It was being steeped in a community and a philosophy of people that truly believed and preached and taught and practiced that health is an abundant river that flows from the inside. And if we set it free, it will express itself naturally. And so for me,
that just made me like...
Yeah, it's an incredible idea. And it sounds nice on paper, but it's challenging to read it in a book and say, got it, I'm going to live that way. Or to hear a provider say that and say, got it, I'm going to live that way. Mm-hmm. It's being steeped in it continually over and over and over again. So by default, the friends that I had during grad school were different than the friends I had previously because I was in a different location. I was down in Atlanta, Georgia. And so just by proxy, I had changed my friend group. I had changed the conversations I was having. I was beginning to change my belief structures almost by sheer repetition and not force of will, but force of exposure. And so it becomes a trial of persistence and consistency in a lot of ways. I think people get really discouraged when they try something that worked for somebody else, and you go through the same process they went through, and you don't get the result. It's a really big blow to say, well, maybe it's not for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe I can't experience that in my life. When in reality, it's simply maybe not a factor of time, or what's the cornerstone for you? And as chiropractors, again, I'm not saying every single person in our office gets adjusted and all their problems go away, but our approach is to address the cornerstone. What is the root of the dysfunction in your physical nervous system that's causing a lack of expression of health in either, could be pain, it could be in physiology, meaning digestive function, immune system function, respiratory function, right? So we'll adjust people and we'll see that they're, especially with kids, we'll see that their breathing improves, we'll see that their sleep improves, we'll see that their immune system improves. Kids stop getting ear infections, they stop getting chronically ill. And so it could be that we change the nervous system and it changes physiology. But I would say that it's even more sometimes, it's a big celebration for me and in our office when somebody starts getting adjusted, and this is more to do with adults really than the children. They start getting adjusted and they begin to have different conversations with us. They begin to express different emotions. They begin to tell themselves different stories before the physical problem even changes. That, in my mind, is the biggest win, because what they're taking away from their process is a change at the center of who they are. That's spontaneous. I didn't put it on them. It's blossoming from within them. And that person is somebody, using your example of the Crohn's, it's like if I'm, I think that I like the example of smoking cigarettes. It's an easy example. You say, well, I'm a smoker and I'm trying to quit. I'm a smoker and I'm trying to quit. I'm a smoker and I'm trying to quit. Well, that's, according to research, you have about a 5% chance of cold turkey quitting smoking. So you better be ready to try a bunch of times and keep going at it over and over again. But if you say, I'm not somebody who smokes, even if you had a cigarette yesterday, I'm not somebody who smokes. I'm not a smoker. And you believe it and you're embodying it, guess what? I have a really strong suspicion that your success rate is going to be astronomically higher than the person who identifies as a smoker who's struggling to quit. Right?
Identity.
I
have something to add there, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, because there's two different, some people think opposite things here. Okay, I'm smoking, I want to quit smoking. I say, what was the statement you used? The good statement that you used.
Oh, I'm not a smoker.
I'm not a smoker. I'm not somebody that smokes. I'm not a smoker. And I quit for 3 days, and then I smoke again. One of the biggest lessons was, okay, that was fantastic. Let's try again. That was fantastic. Let's try. It's the constant journey of improving. And I think that, I don't know what it is, whether it's the quantum leap personal development, groups or TV or movies or what it is, where one of the biggest things I see, and I think this links back to the nervous system, is, okay, I want to make this habit change. I want to be fit. I don't work out right now. Mm-hmm. Next week, I'm working out 5 days a week for 8 weeks. But your nervous system can't hold that. And so you don't do it. And then you're thinking, oh, I can't work out, versus small habits. And I do think it depends on the personality.
Sure.
But I see that people expect, like, oh, it didn't work. It didn't work once, it didn't work twice, it didn't work 3 times, so like, fuck it. And sure. That's a frustrating thing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a piece to that with the death of the identity that's challenging. And this is nuts and bolts of the nervous system. If my brain is thrust into a state of fear through what I'm doing, it's going to result in protection. What that means for most people is to resort back to a previous state of patterned behavior. Meaning, what I did in the past, and let's make it really simple. The brain's primary goal when you wake up in the morning is to keep you alive for the day, right? As long as you're safe for the day, you have a lot of options of what you can do for the day. If you feel like you are in danger, your likelihood of doing something new and having new thoughts and seeing the world in a different way is very small, virtually non-existent. Because fear will drive the brain to shut down the part of the brain that we consider to be our conscious human part, which is called the frontal cortex, takes in new information, makes new decisions, sees the world in new ways, has vision for the future. That part of the brain is suppressed in fear and stress. And it flips back over to the emotional part of the brain, which is the it's emotional regulation. It's also habit formation, where we're going to resort back to pre-programmed behaviors based on emotional experiences we've had in the past. So what did I do last time I was fearful that kept me alive? Even if it's not optimal, I'm going with simple baseline. I just need to make sure I get through the day today. How you doing today? Oh, surviving. Not a good place to be. What are you going to do today? You're going to do the same things you did last time you survived, which was anything that got you through the day. Mm-hmm. And so if I want to change my behavior in a way that will, by default, radically alter my identity, but the leap is too great in that it challenges who I am in a way that puts me into fear, I will self-sabotage to stay safe, right? And that maybe is another issue where I'm going to go ahead and try something that somebody else tried because it worked for them. But when I do that thing, it's challenging who I think I am at the core. And so my nervous system is going to, without my permission, react and protect and pull me back to what's familiar and comfortable. So I also started a fitness journey about a year, maybe just over a year ago. But I had exercised as a youth, from seriously from 7th grade until I was 19. And so for me to pick up 13 years later, I suppose, and say, I'm done with this, I'm going to the gym. After a week here, a week there, I've been going to the gym consistently for the past year. It didn't break my identity because I had already lived that before. And so it wasn't a dangerous thing for me to do, right? But I had become a daily drinker after college and in grad school, and I modulated my fight or flight system by cranking caffeine in the morning way too early because I wasn't going to bed early enough, so I was waking up before I should have, right? Or vice versa, I should have gone to bed earlier. Cranking caffeine in the morning, keeping it going until 5 in the afternoon, and then balancing it out with alcohol in the evenings. And I was stuck in a daily cycle.
I think a lot of people are.
Sure.
Yeah.
And in those formative years, this is the age of, again, probably 20, 21, 22, up until about 27. Because all the way through grad school, it's how I got through, right? And so even though I told the story of I did heal my body during grad school, but I was still developing bad habits. So there's a lesson there. You don't need to be perfect to be able to overcome the challenge you're facing. All you need is enough.
It does not need to be perfect.
Doesn't need to be perfect. But I had developed this new habit during years of my life when my brain was still developing my identity. Right? We don't finish developing until we're 30. So I had created this identity in these very formative early adult years, to where when I decided, I think I have a drinking problem, I think I should slow down a little bit. And I wasn't getting smashed. I was literally a couple of drinks a day, but on average, like that was my day, right? And so when I would think about not drinking for a day, I would become fearful. It was an impossibility. And things shifted for me. I'm not going to get into this part of the story, but things shifted for me over time in my identity that allowed for that freedom to occur. My intention was to drop it down to 2 drinks a week. I hardly ever have drinks. I hardly ever drink anymore.
I want to highlight the word over time.
Over time.
Over time. I feel like in my experience, when I'm not satisfied with the results I've gotten on something that I've tried, as long as I keep myself open to the fact that they can continue to change with time.
Yeah. Well, there's a chemical that our brain produces that keeps us encouraged during those periods of time. It's the chemical dopamine. That you don't even want 100% success on day one, because
the challenge of
where are you going to go from there? You're going to have to find another challenge equally as big to keep yourself encouraged. What you want is noticeable, measurable, experiential change over time that keeps you resistant to fatigue, to effort fatigue.
This pulls a question that maybe is off topic a little bit from chiropractic, or maybe it's not. And then I actually do have possibly a chiropractic question. Does that mean, so we get dopamine hits from, challenging ourselves, finishing a task. Will we
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Will we also receive that hit from the challenge of something that we don't like the challenge of moving through my day with a Crohn's disease diagnosis, or the challenge of getting up?
It depends.
Okay.
Because neuroplasticity works both ways. So neuroplasticity, think of it as you're molding your brain pathways, right? I got pathways in my brain, they're firing all day long, faster than I can possibly comprehend. And we want to create new, better pathways to support the new, better version of ourselves that we want to live out. And neuroplasticity, think about we don't think of plastic as being moldable, but it's like Play-Doh. It's moldable. And so we can mold our, I said Play-Doh, it's like clay. That's I have young kids, and so that's where my mind goes.
I saw it.
Yeah. We're molding our neurological pathways to support the life we're living. So it is a process over time, but if we wake up and we're bitter and resentful and fearful and stressed and just miserable, that's the stuff we're reinforcing. And so there is it's not a free game. And I've heard this before, and I think this is very powerful, that the simple change that we should have in our minds when things get hard is we can say to ourselves, boy, this is hard. This is the good part. Because when things are hard and we persist, yes, it does create neuroplasticity. But when things are hard and we don't have a sense, and so I want to modulate what you said just a hair, dopamine seems to be produced when we have perception of forward motion towards a goal. It's not the achievement that we need. It's the perceived forward motion towards a goal. And so if we wake up and things are hard, and I saw someone say this, had this little suggestion for a day like that, where you wake up and you've been doing great, you've been on your track, you've been making progress, and you wake up and you have a really hard day, and you go, you know what? I'm going to do my XYZ anyway. I'm going to do my practice anyway, even though I don't feel like it, even though it feels like I'm just shaking off a box and it's worthless. Circle that day in your calendar and remind yourself that's the day that when I felt like giving up, I kept going, and that was the good part. And you start to build this reinforcement of I'm somebody who moves towards my goal even when it's hard, even when it feels like I'm not making progress. Because it's not the progress that produces dopamine, it's the perception that we're moving ourselves towards progress. And that specifically, just to get a little more mathematical about it, dopamine will buffer or not suppress, but it makes us resistant to the feeling, the neurological and physiological feeling of wanting to give up that is produced by too much of a stress hormone, epinephrine and norepinephrine. So we have these, when we are efforting, when we're stressing out, we produce chemicals in our brain that are consistent with stress. And at some point you go, whew, that's enough. It's time to quit. That's a natural response. The ability to push through that is partially created by dopamine, not willpower. Willpower you use in very small quantities sparingly, because it will not create the duration of change that we're talking about.
Interesting. I went down a dopamine rabbit hole, and I learned, so I've had a migraine roller coaster ride, and at one point they were almost daily. And I don't take Tylenol, I don't take ibuprofen. I absolutely probably could have gotten pain meds from my neurologist. I didn't want to take those.
Sure, absolutely.
I tried prescriptions that gave me suicidal thoughts. I tried Imitrex, which didn't work. I always had rebound headaches and all these things. So nothing was really working for me except for the use of kratom, which is people don't like it. I used it, and I believe that it saved me from having to take all these other pain meds as I'm trying to figure it out, because I could have tried Botox, but I didn't want to dumb down the pain because I was trying to fix the underlying issue. So I was taking kratom most days, small amounts. I believe that kratom can be abused, and I know people who have abused it who have addiction tendencies. This was not happening with me. However, it does, gives you a good feeling. It's it's opiate-ish. People use it to get off of opiate and heroin addiction. So you can imagine why it would be addictive to the wrong person, and it could cause certain issues. I am a fan of it used in the proper way. But what I realized is all my habits took a crash. I couldn't really build anymore. And I'm thinking, okay, it's from the migraines because I'm in pain every day. And that's not helpful. But I soon realized, as I went to my second chiropractor trying to fix my migraines, my second one helped me more than the first, mainly because he made it very, very clear to me that strengthening was just as important as the adjustments. And so I started feeling better, but I wasn't feeling anything. And I went on this deep dive of dopamine and realized that dopamine does come from doing it when you don't want to. And kratom gave me, in my pain, okay, I actually want to do this, even though I have a headache. And so then as I started weaning off the kratom, as my migraines got better, it was a complete relationship to doing hard things again. Sure. And absolutely. I see it now, and I see it at the gym, and it's been really cool to feel the dopamine, because it's not being pushed down by taking that kratom most days. Yeah.
Well, and that's I think a perfectly sound method is that it's acceptable. You don't use pharmaceuticals. I don't like to use pharmaceuticals, but I have countless patients who were on anxiety or depression meds so that they could get themselves moving towards a goal.
Yeah.
And their ultimate goal being to wean off of them, and whether they were able to do so fully or at least partially. We see the same story with children who are on ADHD meds. Sometimes it's a temporary thing. I would argue, other than the fact that it's a chemical, it's it's not that different from hiring a person to work from the outside to get you motivated to do something, or changing something around in your house to motivate you to get you to do something. We can leverage our lives. You know, like I said, it's not a matter of willpower to just get things done when the odds are against you. It's a matter of setting up our environment in a way that opens the doors to success. Which again, I'll bring it back again to chiropractic. This is what we see as the adjustment doing, is clearing the pathway for health to express itself, so that, in a lot of circumstances, so that the things that you are doing for yourself can become more effective, that your brain is more open to neuroplasticity, that you can take action that was borrowed from you. And I don't mean to discount back pain chiropractic. If somebody has debilitating back pain and you get out of back pain and it allows you to resume passionate forward movement in your life, then that is an absolutely huge boon. And again, this is what, for me, is so remarkable about taking care of children, is that before a child even begins to develop the identity that would get in their way, we get to help modulate their immune system in a way where it's from the ground up. And during developmental stages that are absolutely critical, and you never get to go back and experience them again once you're past them.
Yeah, what a gift to the world you're doing there.
We get to see children build a foundation so that when they encounter their challenges later in life, which they will, it's with a nervous system that's inherently different, structurally different than it would have been had they struggled chronically, neurologically throughout their formative years.
I have a question about identity in the body, and it maybe is a little bit of a nerdy question that means nothing,
Please.
but I'm curious. From a chiropractor standpoint, back to the fitness journey and identity, and you were speaking before about if you're moving towards something that changes your identity, it's scary, and oftentimes we want to run away from that. Sure. Like, I want to be fit. I want to work out. I want to do those things. Why am I not doing those things, right? Yeah. So now we've been doing those things. And one of the first times in the gym, maybe the second time recently, when Adam and I started this challenge where we're trying to give ourselves new morning habits. And so I'm working out more than I have before. And one of the first days I went in there, I talked about this on the last show. I'm lifting weights in front of the mirror. Not necessarily looking at myself too much, but there's a reflection there. I'm lifting weights, and I'm like feeling feelings. I'm feeling sad. I'm started to cry thinking about my dad who had passed in April. And
this is at the gym. You're lifting weights, and
I'm lifting weights, and I'm feeling emotions. And I know me. Like, I feel like guys are really good at, like, get angry and lift the weights and push through. And I don't know how, I didn't know how to do that. It's very weird. Like, the concept is strange for me. I want to, like, throw it down and go, like, run in the girls' room and cry. But I didn't, because I wanted to learn how to use the gym as a way to regulate and to strengthen my nervous system and do things I don't want to do. Because I didn't want to be there that day. And so things were coming up because I didn't want to be there that day. And I'm lifting these weights, and I had the thought, and let me land this plane before, because I'm not sure. So I had the thought, if I actually do this, if I continue this and I get fit, I am leaving everybody I love behind. Every time I choose to do this bicep curl, I'm walking further and further away from everybody that I love, and I'm creating space between that. And it was so profoundly sad for me, but I knew I couldn't stop doing the thing. And I know inherently that that's untrue in a lot of ways, and maybe it would support other people, or maybe it is true, and it's going to separate me from some friends and family because, you know, of different lifestyles. I don't know. But I'm wondering, as you're talking, so I'm thinking, my back is really weak. It has a lot to do with my weak back, weak neck, migraines, right? I've improved them a lot. I still get them, like I'm on day 3. It's very light, but it's there. So I'm thinking I'm strengthening my muscles. Muscles are connected to bone. Back muscle is connected to spine, right? Everything sort of comes from the spine. Am I doing to myself what you may do in the office over time by strengthening my muscles to shape my spine?
That's a great question.
Okay.
Well, but there's a lot you just brought up there, and I'm tempted to tag on to a couple of those things.
We have about 10 minutes, so go wherever you want.
I'm just going to say it. Only chiropractic does chiropractic.
Right.
It's a fact. Only chiropractic does chiropractic. There is no replacement for the adjustment. However, I would, to your chiropractor's point, I would never counsel somebody to skip physical exercise because they're going to a chiropractor. Because likewise, there's no replacement for physical exercise, right? And so the reason chiropractic is different, one, it simply has to do with what we're looking for. We're looking for a keystone opportunity to make a shift in the body where the body is otherwise, it's invisible to you in a way, right? Our brain has become complacent and content with the way things are. It's helpful to think that, especially in terms of purely physical spinal stuff, about 80 to 90% of all of our muscle activity is reflexive and unconscious. Not subconscious, unconscious. And so most of what our body is doing when we're not paying attention, even when we are paying attention, is automatic, right? We think we're in control because we can do this, or we can run or walk, but it's a smaller portion of what's going on. So we want to change the brain below the level of awareness. So there can be a fundamental shift in how you experience your body and what you're able to do with it, right? So
the thoughts that were coming up for me were subconscious, not unconscious.
I would say yes.
Okay.
Subconscious, not unconscious. Because then, because you're experiencing them. They're coming from the basement up into the forefront. Maybe you could say an experience where somebody is experiencing emotions that don't seem to be attached to any content, like, oh, I'm crying and I don't know why. I have no idea where these are even coming from. Perhaps there's something about unconscious emotions becoming conscious. But I don't even want to get in that route.
Yeah,
there's two things I'm thinking about. One is when you move your spine, it is absolutely an essential method of creating an ultimately healthy body. But as you were pointing out, it's like there's a chance that you can overdo it. There's a chance that you're using it to suppress emotions, right? Some people do that. Some people go to the gym as a way to hide from their emotions, right? And so there's no answer to this question other than to say somebody has to be sensitive to their own body to not walk down a path that is ultimately hiding from them deeper the thing they're hoping to overcome. Maybe I'm getting off track here, but I'll use a personal example. I went to a bunch of meditation retreats when I was like 19 and 20, and had an experience of locking this angry beast in a cage in my visionary kind of like experience that I was having during this deep meditation practice. And in my mind, I was like, great, I overcame my demons or something like that. And found out years later that I had essentially isolated parts of myself, subconscious or unconsciously, that were contributing to that period of chronic illness that I had. And so it was letting those parts of myself back out of the cage that coincided with getting healthier. So if you're doing the exercise and you're experiencing these emotions, I like the idea you have of, okay, I'm going to continue to nurture myself, do what's good for me, stand strong, stay here and face this, even though I'm feeling the desire to run away and quit.
Yeah, it's a limiting belief to me, and I don't want to believe that.
And I think there's a sensitivity to acknowledging limiting beliefs and choosing to push forward anyway, versus building habits that would otherwise allow you to like circumvent those limiting beliefs.
Yes.
Right. And that's not exactly what you asked, but that's something that comes to mind.
I'm still curious, as I strengthen my muscles and therefore support my spine more, what you're saying is that supported spine could, assuming that my mindset is correct, support me in. It's almost like I'm supporting myself in seeing these limiting beliefs and working through them. At the same time, my spine is getting stronger and more supported, and it just seems to go with everything that you were saying in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and from a very physical standpoint, are you going to hold your adjustments better if you have a strong spine?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the body is very metaphorical in the way it operates. So if you have a very stable and flexible and dynamic spine, when life gets unstable and demands flexibility, and is putting you through the ringer, do you also have a neurological capacity to handle it better? I think the answer is absolutely yes.
Yes.
I will absolutely see people go through challenging, destabilizing events in their lives and have their physical spine overstabilize. Because there's this metaphorical responsiveness in the brain to say, well, I'm perceiving life is unstable, so my response is to overstabilize. If you have a very stable spine, if you have a very strong spine, if you can deadlift your 1.5 times your body weight off the floor, when it comes time to metaphorically lift yourself off the floor, like, what can you do? And I think that the translation is profound and very, not just poetic, but it's actual.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, you are doing for yourself something that only you can do for yourself, only through physical exercise, and nobody can take that away from you. Mm-hmm. It's something you're doing to support yourself. And so things do overlap, obviously, between chiropractic and nutrition and exercise and mindset habits. But you can't leave anything else on the table. But you only need to do enough to get you moving the direction you want to go in. At the right time, in the right quantity, lest you blow your circuits and overwhelm your brain, put yourself into stress, cause yourself to hide. So it's back to what we said earlier. It is a persistence, but it takes care and attention. And talking about looking yourself in the mirror and telling yourself, getting angry and yelling at yourself to lift weights, maybe that works for guys, I don't know. But it's equally as true to say that this is an act of loving yourself. That's an act of nurturing yourself. And to just supporting yourself and uplifting yourself in who you are. Yeah, I can do this. I am awesome. This is wonderful. You go, girl. Right? That's not what I say. I generally say, I don't say mean things to myself, but my self-talk is usually, just lift it. That's what I say to myself. It's like, okay, just lift it. Yeah.
This was great. We had so many other topics to get into. We have 2 minutes. I would like you just to share where you are, and I wanted to dive into the chiropractic as a parenting technique, and I'm curious. I'm sure that there's a lot of thoughts about it. If you feel like you even can fit it into a minute, what you might want to say to a parent who's curious but a little nervous to bring their.
Sure. Yeah. In less than 2 minutes.
And then finish that off with how to find you.
It's insanely safe. The most ridiculously safe thing on the planet. One of the weirdest things you see is people on the internet saying, like, don't take your kid to a chiropractor, they're going to hurt them. It's like, it's unbelievable to me. It's the gentlest thing you've ever witnessed to adjust a baby, let alone a newborn. Why are we doing this? It is a method of taking care of challenging health issues for kids, latching issues, constipation, sleep issues, colic with babies, ADHD, speech delays, ear infections, and we're not treating any of it. We treat none of this stuff. All we do is free the nervous system so that it can express health naturally. But I always tell parents, it's a great move to use chiropractic to help your child overcome their health challenges. It's a real power move to help set their nervous system in place to be rock solid so that as they grow, who they can become has a totally different potential than maybe we had as kids when we grew up stressed and overwhelmed. And so it's an investment in their future. It's truly what it is.
Where can they find you?
Tone of Life Ohio on Instagram, TONE of Life Ohio. That's on Instagram. We love Instagram, so we do a lot of stuff there. And toneoflifeohio.com, that's our website.
I did ask one friend if she had a question because she likes your stuff, and she said, can he come closer to
There's only one of me. People ask all the time if I can open a shop in Lakewood and Canton. It's like, there's only one of me.
Drive.
Maybe someday. People do come. People come from an hour away sometimes to come to us because we are specialty. But that's
I drove an hour to see my naturopath who's right across the street from you.
Yeah.
Changed my life. So
that's awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you taking the time to get curious with me, and I will see you on the next one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.